Well, welcome back to Life on Cars. Hope you're all well. And in today's episode, we're going to be doing an oil and filter change on a Mark III 1.3cc petrol Toyota Yaris. Now on the Yaris, they do have quite an unusual design for the oil filter. So that'll be interesting for you to watch and see how that's done. Basically, most oil filters use a spin-on cartridge type, but on the Yaris, it uses a oil filter element which is inside its own aluminium casting casing. So yeah, we'll get into this and see what's involved in an oil filter change for a Toyota Yaris. Let's go. So what tools are you going to need to do an oil change on this 1.3 petrol Mark III Yaris? Well, you're going to need a sharp screwdriver, a 14mm spanner, or a 14mm socket and ratchet. I've got this 1/2" drive converter, so it's 1/2" drive to 3/8 drive, which I'm going to use on this 1/2" ratchet, and you'll see why I use that a bit later on in the video. You don't necessarily need one of those though. You could probably get away with a 3/8 drive ratchet and an extension. So that would do the same job as that. And you'll see why a bit later on in the video. If you've got access to a torque wrench, a mini torque wrench, that would be really useful for the job. It's not absolutely necessary, but if you're not sure how much to tighten things by feel, if you're not used to this, then a torque wrench is a great idea. Like I say, I've got a 1/2" ratchet because I'm going to use that. And then you will need a special tool for the Mark III Yaris oil filter on the petrol engine. So I've got this one here, which is made by Draper Expert, and this fits the oil filter housing. The part number for this is P14, and it's a 63 to 64mm, it says on there. It's also got 901-1 written underneath there as well. So you will need to get one of these special tools to remove the oil filter housing on the Yaris, because it is a bit of an unusual filter, as we're going to see later on. I do have a squirty oil can just to apply a bit of oil to some of the seals that are going to come off. And then obviously you will need your parts. So let's have a look what parts we've got. Forgot to mention, you're going to need some disposable gloves and plenty of rags. It's going to show you what parts you need for this job. Now on the Yaris, on this particular model, the oil filter is basically, it's not a cartridge, a spin-on cartridge. It's actually an oil filter element. And you can see the part number there. 04152YZZA7. Now when you go to Toyota, ask them to provide you with a new sump plug washer as well, because you will need one of those. There's actually two grades of oil for this car. There's 0W20 and there's 5W30. Either grades will be fine for use in the UK for this vehicle, so I've gone for 5W30 fully synthetic from Total Energies. You will also need some kind of receptacle to drain your oil into. I use this big old 5-litre jug here. For the Yaris, you'll need something that holds at least 4 litres or just under 4 litres, so it doesn't get too full. But yeah, I use this big old 5-litre jug. But if you're struggling, you can actually make something to drain your old oil into from an old container. So this is an old plastic oil container, and still got the lid on. So take a Stanley knife and basically Voila, a new oil drainer. Perfect. You're also going to need a method of getting under the car, and today I'm going to be using these Sealy 3000C ramps, and if you're interested, there is a review on those on another video on my channel. I'm going to put some cardboard down just because it is a bit wet under there from water dripping off, so and also if we have any splashes of oil, it'll just soak into the cardboard. So like I say, the engine's been running for about 5 minutes, so it's warmed up. And what I always do before I start an oil change is just pull the dipstick out a bit, and I'm going to take the cap off the top of the engine, and I do that for a couple of reasons. One is it's a good visual reminder that you've got to put fresh oil in, but the main reason is it allows air to come into the top of the engine while the oil's coming out the bottom. It just allows the oil to drain out a bit easier. Okay, so on the Yaris, what we're looking for is this here. This is the sump plug, which is a 14mm head, and then we're also going to be working on this. This is the oil filter housing, so we'll come on to that in a minute. Stage one is we're going to take this plug out, and we're going to use a jug to catch the oil and let it drain out for a little bit from here. Just crack that off, get the jug in place, and then the trick with these is to get the plug going round right to the end, and just when you feel it getting to the end of the threads, whip it out of the way quick like that, so you don't get loads of oil all over your hand. It's quite dark, isn't it? It's ready for a change. So we're just going to let that drain out. Move the jug slightly, so we can let that drain out now. I'll give my hand a bit of a wipe. Yeah, I'm just going to let that trickle for a bit. Right, that looks like it's finished draining out, so I'm going to take my old sump plug, and you'll probably find that the washer has stuck to the back of the plug, so you can just use a sharp screwdriver and flick it like that and it'll come off. Get rid of the old sump washer and put a new one on, and then we're ready to install that back on the car. So if you do own a torque wrench, I'm lucky enough to have this mini torque wrench. The torque setting for the sump plug is 27 Newton meters. So I've got that set on 27 Newton meters, and I'm going to pop the sump plug back in now. Just screw it in by hand all the way. If you haven't got a torque wrench, it just wants nipping up really. You don't need to go mad, just give it a general nip. So it needs to be tight, but not over tight. That's why it's a good idea, if you're not used to tightening things up, to buy a torque wrench. So I'm just going to slide that jug out of the way a bit, and then we'll tighten that up to the correct torque. You'll see here it kind of nips up and then it stops. It's not hugely tight, just enough to squash the washer a little bit. Just going to wipe them drips off now, and then we're ready for step 2, dealing with the oil filter. So I'm using this 1/2 inch drive to 3/8 drive converter, which I'm going to put on my 1/2 inch drive ratchet. It just gives us a bit of extra height, but any 3/8 drive ratchet will fit into the square hole on the bottom of the oil filter like that. And what you're going to be doing is taking out that center cap on the oil filter. So there might be a couple of drops of oil, so we'll have the bucket underneath like that, just in case. I'm going to take that out. So there's a couple of drops of oil. Okay, so I've wiped that off. That's what that looks like. It's just a cover, really. Now this is where Toyota have been quite clever. Inside your kit, they give you this little plastic device here. And what you do with that is you push it up inside that hole now, and it drains the old oil out of the oil filter. Watch this. So you push that up until it clicks like that. And as you can see, it's draining the old oil out of the filter, which is a brilliant idea because it saves a lot of mess. Because normally with this design, when we start to unwind the filter housing, it would just leak oil all out of the seal here, and it would go everywhere. But Toyota have quite cleverly given us that little plastic plug there. As you can see, it's drained all the old oil out of the oil filter. So we'll just let that drip for a few more minutes, and that'll just make our life a lot easier when we come to unscrew this bit. Right, I'm happy that that's been draining out long enough now, so I'm just going to take that plastic tool out. So you just pull it to one side and it should come out. There we are. And then we can get rid of that plastic tool. And now we're ready to move that jug out of the way again. I'm going to use our special tool now and put it onto the filter housing. Now it shouldn't be very tight, this, because they're only torqued to a small torque. There we go. And we should be able to unscrew that filter housing. Just going to take the ratchet out the way. And when this comes out, we need to keep it upright, and we can go straight off and onto the bench. And we shouldn't get any oil spillage because that little plastic tube's drained it all out. You might get the odd drippage, that's why I have a bit of cardboard down, but generally you won't get a huge amount of oil coming out of there. And there it is. So now we need to get that onto the bench and have a look what we need to do next. Okay, so we've transferred to the bench, and that was our little plug cover that we took out the bottom of the oil filter. There's the plastic drain kit from Toyota, which comes in the box. It does actually have instructions on the side of the box to show you how to use that if you need to refer to it. But anyway, we can get rid of that now. We don't need that anymore. It can go in the bin. So we're going to be dealing with this now. So we're going to need a few tissues because it's going to be a little bit oily. So we need to lift that out of our tool and then give everything a damn good wipe off. That's just fell out. So there's a little rubber O-ring that goes in the bottom of there, which we're going to change anyway. So if that hasn't fallen out on yours, you can get rid of it. So that little O-ring, that can go in the bin. And then the cartridge itself is here. So that just basically lifts out. So we need to discard that, get rid of it. That's your old oil filter, which has been working hard for you over the last year or so, or however long it's been in. So we'll get rid of that. And now what we need to be doing is giving this little oil filter container, cartridge container, a bit of a wipe off and a clean down. And you can give it a wipe out inside as well if you want. So I'll just pause the video while I do that. Okay, so I've got the thick wiped off that, but this is where the brake and clutch cleaner might come in. You don't have to do this, but I like to use a bit of brake and clutch cleaner inside there and just give it a wash out. There we are. So you can see what that's done. It's given us a really nice clean off, and it's cleaned the inside out as well. Got rid of any remainder of that old engine oil. So the next step now is we need to get the rubber seals from the kit. So there's a rubber seal on here. It's where the sharp screwdriver comes in. We're going to take that off, get rid of that. So there's two old seals that we're going to get rid of. The one that goes on the bottom, throw that away, and the one that goes in that groove there. I'm going to get rid of that, so throw them away. So inside your oil filter packet, you've got this. So we're going to take our new seals, pop them in place. Make sure it goes in that bottom groove there, like so. There we are. Make sure there's no foreign objects on there. I'm probably going to put a little smear of engine oil on that seal when we screw it back in, just to help it stay in place as it screws back in. I take our new bottom seal, pop that on there like that. So that basically just seals for this cap here. So we're going to take our new oil filter now, and it doesn't matter which way, they're not sided, So it just slides onto there, push it down as far as it'll go. You'll see that's spring loaded. As long as that filter's gone down as far as it'll go, that's fine. Just putting a little bit of lubrication around that seal. Boy, racers are about today with the loud exhausts. It's just a fine smear of oil on there. Oops, nearly dropped it. And I am going to put a little smear on there as well. Just put that in there, just so I don't want that seal to fall out, that's all. So I'm just going to leave that nipped on there like that. Alright, let's get it on the car. So it is a good idea to just give the aperture or the opening of the filter housing a little wipe around, just so there's no foreign objects there where the oil filter is going to screw back in. So I'm just going to start it off by hand, screwing it in as far as it'll go, and then it'll just get a bit tight before it goes all the way home. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a socket, a 3/8 drive again, back into the bottom and wind that in until it's snug. But it's really important not to over tighten these, so we're just going to wind it in until it's snug, and then we'll use a torque wrench. Quite an unusual alloy casting, so just need to be careful when we're doing this. So we're going to get our little mini torque wrench again, and the torque setting for this is 15 Newton meters, so it's basically just nipped up. Because like I say, we need to be careful that we don't over tighten this. So by fitting the 3/8 drive into the bottom of the filter housing again, it will tighten this up correctly, and it'll also tighten that bottom drain plug from the filter housing as well to the correct torque. So here we go, let's just get that wound in now. And it's as simple as that, it just needs nipping up. So it's ideal if you've got a torque wrench for this to get it to the correct torque. So we're getting closer now, guys. So we've got the filter and everything tightened back in, torqued up correctly, and we're happy with that. We've also torqued up the sump plug. We're happy with that. We've had a bit of a wipe over, there's no drips. So we're ready now really to get some oil in, but then we'll be coming back underneath here just to check for leaks once we've started the engine up. Now I'm normally very good at hitting the hole, but it's always a good idea to use a funnel if you've got one handy, saves making a mess. So I'm going to go for about 3 litres, and remember the side of the oil can does have measurements on it as well, so that's handy. So we'll get 3 litres popped in first, and then we should be good. So as you can see there, we're not quite at the top, so I'm going to put a little bit more in. So what we're aiming for on the dipstick is to get to this top dot here. That's full, that's minimum. So obviously for this oil change we want it right up to the top dot, so it's full. So let's see where we're at. Right, that's a bit closer now, so I think we're ready to start the engine. I'll pop the cap back on. So when you start an engine up for the first time after an oil change, we're going to watch that oil pressure light there, the little oil can symbol. I'm going to make sure that that goes off, because if it doesn't go off after a few seconds, then it may be that you've got something wrong and something's either leaking or there's something not right with the oil filter. So it's a good idea to keep an eye on that oil can symbol there. Like I say, it should go off in a few seconds. So I'm going to start the engine off, start the engine up, let it run for a few seconds, make sure the light goes off, and then we're going to shut it off again. There we are, the light's off. I'm going to let it run for a little bit, maybe 5 or 10 seconds. And now we need to get the oil level correct, so it's back around to the front. So it's a good idea at this point to get back down and have a quick look underneath for any leaks. So I'm just checking to make sure there's no sign of any oil coming from the plug or from around the filter housing, and this looks perfectly fine, so we're safe to carry on. So for this oil change job today, I'm using Sealy 3000 ramps, plastic ramps to raise the car. And if you're interested in plastic ramps, I've done a review on these Sealy 3000, so I'll put the link in the information. But they're a good quality ramp, and the height for doing the oil change is spot on. So yeah, check that review out if you're interested. So now that we've got the engine started, the light's gone out okay, we've had a look underneath and there's no leaks. We need to get that oil level spot on now, because what happens is when you start the engine up, some of that new oil goes into the oil filter, so it'll affect the level. So we need to get the level absolutely perfect. And to do that, I'm going to get the car off these ramps, because it's ideal, or it's much better, shall we say, if the car's on level ground when you're checking the oil level. So because I'm using ramps for this particular job, I'm going to back the car off the ramp now. So it's important to let the car stand for 5 minutes or so before we do this, just to let the oil settle down into the sump. So all I'm going to do now is give the oil a dip. You can see there it has gone down because the oil filter has taken some oil out. So we need to add, looks like about half a litre, and then that should get it back up to the very top. So let's get that done. So just add a little bit more oil and then let that settle down into the sump again for about 30 seconds. There we are, absolutely spot on. We don't want it any further than that dot, otherwise that'll be overfilling, so I'm absolutely happy with that. Put the cap on nice and tight. Job done. So the only thing left to do now is to make a note of the miles and the date of when we did the oil change so that we know when to do it next time. And spot on, all sorted. What to do with old engine oil? Well, I have a big petrol can, a big one, which I store my old engine oil in. And then in the summer, what I do is I use it to paint my fences. So old engine oil is brilliant for preserving your wooden fences in your garden. So that's what I use mine for. But you can dispose of it normally down your local recycling centre. They normally will have somewhere that you can get rid of old engine oil. Well, I hope you enjoyed that and got something out of it. And if you did, please give us a like and subscribe. And check out the playlist for other jobs that we've done on Japanese cars and other vehicles on Life on Cars. And we'll see you again very soon for more videos. Take care and stay well. Bye bye.